Hello and welcome to Shelby's Book Loft. That's actually just the front porch. Today I'm going to start reading The Stepford Wives. Woo! Creepy. It's a little bit of like what's happening now, when things are that kind of infectious that they just keep, infecting. So this is by Levin, the author of Rosemary's Baby. It was first published in 1972, and we have here on the front page, a quote. Today the combat takes a different shape. Instead of wishing to put man in a prison, woman endeavors to escape from one. She no longer seeks to drag him into the realms of immanence, but to emerge herself into the light of transcendence. Now the attitude of the males create a new conflict. It is with a bad grace that the man lets her go. Simone de Beauvoir, The Second Sex. The Stepford Wives. 1. The welcome wagon lady, 60 if she was a day, but working at youth and vivacity, ginger hair, red lips, a sunshine yellow dress, twinkled her eyes and teeth at Joanna and said, "You're really going to like it here. It's a nice town with nice people. You couldn't have made a better choice." Her brown leather shoulder bag was enormous, old and scuffed. From it she dealt Joanna packets of powdered breakfast drink and soup mix, a toy-sized box of non-polluting detergent, a booklet of discount slips good at 22 local shops, 2 cakes of soap, a folder of deodorant pads. Enough, Joanna said, standing in the doorway with both hands full. Halt, thank you. The welcome wagon lady put a vial of cologne on top of the other things and then searched in her bag. "No, really," Joanna said, and brought out pink-framed eyeglasses and a small embroidered notebook. "I do the notes on newcomers," she said, smiling and putting on the glasses, "for the Chronicle." She dug at the bag's bottom and came up with a pen, clicking its top with a red-nailed thumb. Joanna told her where she and Walter had moved from, what Walter did and with which firm, Pete's and Kim's names and ages, what she had done before they were born, and which colleges she and Walter had gone to. She shifted impatiently as she spoke, standing there at the front door with both hands full, and Pete and Kim out of earshot. Damn it. "Do you have any hobbies or special interests?" She was about to say a time-saving no, but hesitated. A full answer, printed in the local paper, might serve as a signpost to women, like herself, potential friends. The women she had met in the past few days, the ones in the nearby houses, were pleasant and helpful enough, but they seemed completely absorbed in their household duties. Maybe when she got to know them better, she would find they had farther-reaching thoughts and concerns, yet it might be wise to put up that signpost. So, "Yes, several," she said. "I play tennis whenever I get the chance, and I'm a semi-professional photographer." "Oh," the welcome wagon lady said, writing. Joanna smiled. "That means an agency handles 3 of my pictures," she said. "And I am interested in politics and in the women's liberation movement. Very much so in that. And so is my husband." "He is?" The welcome wagon lady looked at her. "Yes," Joanna said. "Lots of men are." She didn't go into the benefits for both sexes explanation. Instead, she leaned her head back into the entrance hall and listened. A TV audience laughed in the family room, and Pete and Kim argued, but below intervention level. She smiled at the welcome wagon lady. "He's interested in boating and football, too," she said, "and he collects early American legal documents." Walter's half of the signpost. The welcome wagon lady wrote and closed her notebook, clicked her pen. "That's just fine, Mrs. Eberhardt," she said, smiling and taking her glasses off. "I know you're going to love it here," she said, "and I want to wish you a sincere and hearty welcome to Stepford. If there's any information I can give you about local shops and services, please feel free to call me. The number's right there on the front of the discount book." "Thank you, I will," Joanna said, "and thanks for all of this." "Try them. They're good products," the welcome wagon lady said. She turned away. "Goodbye now." Joanna said goodbye to her and watched her go down the curving walk toward her battered red Volkswagen. Dogs suddenly filled its windows, a black and brown excitement of spaniels, jumping and barking, paws pressing glass. Moving whiteness beyond Moving whiteness beyond the Volkswagen caught Joanna's eye. Across the sapling-lined street in one of the Claybrook's upstairs windows, whiteness moved again, leaving one pane and filling the next. The window was being washed. Joanna smiled, in case Donna Claybrook was looking at her. The whiteness moved to a lower pane, and then to the pane beside it. With a surprising roar, the Volkswagen lunged from the curb, and Joanna backed into the entrance hall and hipped the door closed. Well now. Stepford, you say? I wonder where they moved from. A lot of explaining without giving any real details. Anyways, I'm hooked, are you? Pete and Kim were arguing louder. BM, diarrhea, ow, stop it. Cut it out, Joanna called, dumping the double handful of samples onto the kitchen table. She's kicking me, Pete shouted, and Kim shouted, I'm not, you diarrhea. Now stop it, Joanna said, going to the port and looking through. Pete lay on the floor too close to the TV set, and Kim stood beside him, red-faced, keeping from kicking him. Both were still in their pajamas. She kicked me twice, Pete said, and Kim shouted, You changed the channel. You changed the channel. I did not. I was watching Felix the Cat. Quiet, Joanna commanded. Absolute silence. Utter, complete, total silence. They looked at her. Kim with Walter's wide blue eyes, Pete with her own grave dark ones. Race him to a flying finish, the TV set cried. No electricity. A, you're too close to the set, Joanna said. B, turn it off. And C, get dressed, both of you. That green stuff outside is grass, and the yellow stuff coming down on it is sunshine. Cute mom. Pete scrambled to his feet and pawed the TV's control panel, blanking its screen to a dying dot of light. Kim began crying. Joanna groaned and went around into the family room. Crouching, she hugged Kim to her shoulder and rubbed her pajamaed back, kissed her silk soft ringlets. Ah, come on now, she said. Don't you want to play with that nice Allison again? Maybe you'll see another chipmunk. Pete came over and lifted a strand of her hair. She looked up at him and said, Don't change channels on her. Oh, all right, he said, winding a finger in the dark strand. And don't kick, she told Kim. She rubbed her back and tried to get kisses in at her squirming away cheek. Squirming away. It's hyphenated. Okay. It was Walter's turn to do the dishes, and Pete and Kim were playing quietly in Pete's room. Yeah, is Walter really into feminism? I'm sorry, the women's liberation movement. Reminds me of that part in Life of Brian when they're at the gladiatorial games, and you got the ladies up in the bandstand arguing about the bleachers, the seats, the nosebleeds, whatever, arguing about if it's the Liberation Front or the Liberation Front of Judea or the Judean Liberation Front or whatever. Anyways, sorry. So Walter's turn to do the dishes, and Pete and Kim were playing quietly in Pete's room, so she took a quick, cool shower and put on shorts and a shirt and her sneakers and brushed her hair. She peeked in on Pete and Kim as she tied her hair. They were sitting on the floor playing with Pete's space station. She moved quietly away and went down the new carpeted stairs. It was a good evening. The unpacking was done with, finally, and she was cool and clean with a few free minutes, 10 or 15 if she was lucky, to maybe sit outside with Walter and look at their trees and their 2.2 acres. She went around and down the hallway. The kitchen was spick and span, the washer pounding. Walter was at the sink, leaning to the window and looking out toward the Van Sant house. A Rorschach blot of sweat stained his shirt. A rabbit with its ears bent outward. Interesting. He turned around and started and smiled. How long have you been here? He asked, dish towel wiping his hands. I just came in, she said. You look reborn. That's how I feel. They're playing like angels. You want to go outside? Okay, he said, folding the towel. Just for a few minutes, though. I'm going over to talk with Ted. He slid the towel onto a rod of the rack. That's why I was looking, he said. They just finished eating. What are you going to talk to him about? They went out on the patio. I was going to tell you, he said as they walked. I've changed my mind. I'm joining that men's association. She stopped and looked at him. Too many important things are centered there to just opt out of it, he said. Local politicking, the charity drives, and so on. She said, how can you join an outdated, old-fashioned... I spoke to some of the men on the train, he said. Ted and Vic Stavros, and a few others they introduced me to. They agree that the no women allowed business is archaic. He took her arm and they walked on. But the only way to change it is from inside, he said. So I'm going to help do it. I'm joining Saturday night. Ted's going to brief me on who's on what committees. He offered her his cigarettes. Are you smoking or non tonight? Are you smoking or non? Oh, smoking, she said, reaching for one. They stood at the patio's far edge in cool blue dusk twanging with crickets, and Walter held his lighter flame to Joanna's cigarette and to his own. Look at that sky, he said, worth every penny it cost us. She looked. The sky was mauve and blue and dark blue. Lovely. And then she looked at her cigarette. Organizations can be changed from the outside, she said. No, really? You get up petitions, you picket. But it's easier from the inside, Walter said. You'll see. If these men I spoke to are typical, it'll be the Everybody's Association before you know it. Co-ed poker, sex on the pool table. If these men you spoke to were typical, she said, it would be the Everybody's Association already. Oh, all right, go ahead and join. I'll think up slogans for placards. I'll have plenty of time when school starts. He put his arm around her shoulders and said, hold off a little while. If it's not open to women in 6 months, I'll quit and we'll march together, shoulder to shoulder. Sex, yes. Sexism, no. Stepford is out of step, she said, reaching for the ashtray on the picnic table. Not bad. Wait till I really get going. Like skilled in like coming to a new town and then trying to change archaic institutions from the inside. 72. They finished their cigarettes and stood arm in arm looking at their dark, wide runway of lawn and the tall trees, black against mauve sky that ended it. Lights shone among the trunks of the trees, windows of houses on the next street over, Harvest Lane. Robert Ardrea's right, Joanna said. I feel very territorial. Walter looked around at the Van Sant house and then squinted at his watch. I'm going to go in and wash up, he said, and kissed her cheek. She turned and took his chin and kissed his lips. I'm going to stay out a few minutes, she said. Yell if they're acting up. Okay, he said. He went into the house by the living room door. She held her arms and rubbed them. The evening was growing cooler. Closing her eyes, she threw her head back and breathed the smell of grass and trees and clean air. Delicious. She opened her eyes to a single speck of star in dark blue sky, a trillion miles above her. Starlight, star bright, she said. She didn't say the rest of it, but she thought it. I do that. She wished that they would be happy in Stepford, that Pete and Kim would do well in school, and that she and Walter would find good friends and fulfillment, that he wouldn't mind the commuting, though the whole idea of moving had been his in the first place, that the lives of all four of them would be enriched rather than diminished, as she had feared, by leaving the city, the filthy, crowded, crime-ridden, but so alive city. That's funny because I've got this rule about starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight, yada yada. You have to know for sure, without a doubt, it is the first star you see. You have to have nothing crossed, like no legs, hands, whatever. And the wish that you make has to be devoid of and, because then that makes it multiple wishes, right? So you have to be, and very precise. To be very precise. Sound and movement turned her toward the Van Sant house. Carol Van Sant, a dark silhouette against the radiance of her kitchen doorway, was pressing the lid down onto a garbage can. She bent to the ground, red hair glinting, and came up with something large and round, a stone. She put it on the top of the lid. Hi, Joanna called. Carol straightened and stood facing her, tall and leggy and naked seeming, but edged by the purple of a lighted from behind dress. Who's there? She called. Joanna Eberhardt, Joanna said. Did I scare you? I'm sorry if I did. She went toward the fence that divided her and Walter's property from the Van Sants. Hi, Joanna, Carol said in her nasal New Englandy voice. No, you didn't scare me. It's a nice night, isn't it? Yes, Joanna said, and I'm done with my unpacking, which makes it even nicer. She had to speak loud. Carol had stayed by her doorway, still too far away for comfortable conversation, even though she herself was now at the flower bed edging the split rail fence. Kim had a great time with Allison this afternoon, she said. They get along beautifully together. Kim's a sweet little girl, Carol said. I'm glad Allison has such a nice new friend next door. Good night, Joanna. She turned to go in. Hey, wait a minute, Joanna called. Carol turned back. Yes, she said. Joanna wished that the flower bed and fence weren't there so she could move closer. Or darn it, that Carol would come to her side of the fence. What was so top priority urgent in that fluorescent lighted copper pot hanging kitchen? There's all kinds of these multiple worded, hyphenated, descriptive, yeah. Walter's coming over to talk with Ted, she said, speaking loud to Carol's naked seeming silhouette. When you've got the kids down, why don't you come over and have a cup of coffee with me? Thanks, I'd like to, Carol said, but I have to wax the family room floor. Tonight? Night is the only time to do it until school starts. Well, can it wait? It's only 3 more days. Carol shook her head. No, I've put it off too long as it is, she said. It's all over scuff marks. And besides, Ted will be going to the Men's Association later on. Does he go every night? Just about. Dear God. And you stay home and do housework? There's always something or other that has to be done, Carol said. You know how it is. I have to finish the kitchen now. Good night. Good night, Joanna said, and watched Carol go. Profile of 2 big bosom. Again, 2-big. Into her kitchen and closed the door. She reappeared almost instantly at the over the sink window. Again, over the sink. Adjusting the water level, taking hold of something and scrubbing it. Her red hair was neat and gleaming. Her thin-nosed face looked thoughtful and, damn it all, intelligent. Her big purpled breasts bobbed with her scrubbing. Joanna went back to the patio. No, she didn't know how it was, thank God. Not to be like that, a compulsive hausfrau. Who could blame Ted for taking advantage of such an asking to be exploited Patsy? Again, asking to be exploited. She could blame him, that's who. Walter came out of the house in a light jacket. I don't think I'll be more than an hour or so, he said. That Carol Van Sant is not to be believed, she said. She can't come over for a cup of coffee because she has to wax the family room floor. Ted goes to the Men's Association every night, and she stays home doing housework. Jesus, Walter said, shaking his head. Next to her, she said, my mother is Kate Millett. He laughed. See you later, he said, and kissed her cheek and went away across the patio. She took another look at her star, brighter now. Get to work, you, she thought to it, and went into the house. Yeah, never add ands in a Starlight Star Bright Wish. All right, just a wee bit more, and then we'll end part 1 of the Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. Yeah, Carol's odd, isn't she? The 4 of them went out together Saturday morning, seat-belted into their spotless new station wagon. Joanna and Walter in sunglasses, talking of stores and shopping, and Pete and Kim power-switching their windows down and up and down and up till Walter told them to stop it. The day was vivid and gem-edged, a signal of autumn. They drove to Stepford Center, white-frame colonial shopfront, postcard pretty, for discount slip hardware and pharmaceuticals, then south on Route 9 to a large new shopping mall. Discount slip shoes for Pete and Kim. What a wait. And a no-discount jungle gym. Then east on East Bridge Road to a McDonald's, Big Macs, chocolate shakes, and a little farther east for antiques. An octagonal end table, no documents. How, middle class. And then north, south, east, west, all over Stepford. Anvil Road, Cold Creek Road, Honeycutt, Beavertail, Burgess Ridge, to show Pete and Kim, Joanna and Walter had seen it all house hunting. Their new school and the schools they would go to later on. The you'd never guess what it is from the outside non-polluting incinerator plant. and the picnic grounds where a community pool was under construction. Joanna sang Good Morning Sunshine, Starshine at Pete's request, and they all did McNamara's band, with each one imitating a different instrument in the final part, and Kim threw up, but with enough warning for Walter to pull over and stop and get her unbuckled and out of the station wagon in time, thank God. That quieted things down. They drove back through Stepford Center, slowly because Pete said that he might throw up too. Walter pointed out the white frame library and the Historical Society's 200-year-old white frame cottage. Kim, looking upward through her window, lifted a sucked, thin lifesaver from her tongue and said, "What's that big one?" "That's the Men's Association house," Walter said. Pete leaned to his seatbelt limit and ducked and looked. "Is that where you're going tonight?" he asked. "That's right," Walter said. "How do you get to it?" "There's a driveway farther up the hill." They had come up behind a truck with a man in khakis standing in its open back, his arms stretched to its sides. He had brown hair and a long, lean face and wore eyeglasses. "That's Gary Claybrook, isn't it?" Joanna said. Walter pressed a fleeting horn beep and waved his arm out the window. Their across-the-street neighbor bent to look at them, then smiled and waved and caught hold of the truck. Joanna smiled and waved. Kim yelled, "Hello, Mr. Claybrook," and Pete yelled, "Where's Jeremy?" "He can't hear you," Joanna said. "I wish I could ride a truck that way," Pete said, and Kim said, "Me too." The truck was creeping and grinding, fighting against the steep left-curving upgrade. Gary Claybrook smiled self-consciously at them. The truck was half filled with small cartons. "What's he doing? Moonlighting?" Joanna asked. "Not if he makes as much as Ted says he does," Walter said. "Oh? What's moonlighting?" Pete asked. The truck's brake lights flashed. It stopped, its left turn signal winking. Joanna explained what moonlighting was. A car shot down the hill and the truck began moving across the left lane. "Is that the driveway?" Pete asked, and Walter nodded and said, "Yep, that's it." Kim switched her window farther down, shouting, "Hello, Mr. Claybrook." He waved as they drove past him. Pete sprung his seatbelt buckle and jumped onto his knees. "Can I go there sometime?" he asked, looking out the back. Sorry," Walter said. "No kids allowed." "Boy, they've got a great big fence," Pete said, "like in Hogan's Heroes." "To keep women out," Joanna said, looking ahead, a hand to the rim of her sunglasses. Walter smiled. "Really?" Pete asked. "Is that what it's for?" Pete took his belt off. Kim said. "Pete," Joanna said. They drove up Norwood Road, then west on Winter Hill Drive. Okay, maybe one more. What do you guys think so far? Anyone seen the movie? What's her name? Katharine Ross, I think. Played, I think this character. What's her name? Joanna. Katharine Ross. She was in, she was the girl, the main, girlfriend of, The Graduate. Dustin Hoffman and Anne Bancroft. That's a good movie, if you can sit through the whole thing. As a matter of principle, she wasn't going to do any housework. Not that there wasn't plenty to do, God knows, and some that she actually wanted to do, like getting the living room bookshelves squared away. But not tonight, no sir. It could darn well wait. She wasn't Carol Van Sant, and she wasn't Mary Ann Stavros, pushing a vacuum cleaner past a downstairs window when she went to lower Pete's shade. No, sir. Walter was at the Men's Association, fine. He had to go there to join, and he'd have to go there once or twice a week to get it changed. But she wasn't going to do housework while he was there, at least not this first time, any more than he was going to do it when she was out somewhere, which she was going to be on the next clear moonlit night, down in the center getting some time exposures of those colonial shop fronts. The hardware store's irregular panes would wobble the moon's reflection, maybe interestingly. She's quite hopeful. So once Pete and Kim were sound asleep, she went down to the cellar and did some measuring and planning in the storage room that was going to be her dark room. And then she went back up, checked Pete and Kim, and made herself a vodka and tonic and took it into the den. She put the radio on to some schmaltzy but nice Richard Rodgers-y stuff, moved Walter's contracts and things carefully from the center of the desk, and got out her magnifier and red pencil and the contact sheets of her quick before I leave the city pictures. Again, with the hyphen. Most of them were a waste of film, as she'd suspected when taking them. She was never any good when she was rushing. But she found one that really excited her, a shot of a well-dressed young black man with an attaché case, glaring venomously at an empty cab that had just passed him. If his expression enlarged well, and if she darkened the background to bring up the blurred cab, it could be an arresting picture, one she was sure the agency would be willing to handle. There were plenty of markets for pictures dramatizing racial tensions. Jesus Christ, dramatizing, see? But it could have been like anybody staring down a cab that just passed you. I have had that kind of thing happen to me plenty of times. She red penciled an asterisk beside the print and went on looking for others that were good, or at least part good, but croppable. She remembered her vodka and tonic and sipped it. At 11:15, she was tired, so she put her things away in her side of the desk, put Walter's things back where they had been, turned the radio off, and brought her glass into the kitchen and rinsed it. She checked the doors, turned the lights off, except the one in the entrance hall, and went upstairs. Kim's elephant was on the floor. She picked it up and tucked it under the blanket beside the pillow, and then pulled the blanket up onto Kim's shoulders and fondled her ringlets very lightly. Pete was on his back with his mouth open, exactly as he had been when she had checked before. She waited until she saw his chest move, then opened his door wider, switched the hall light off, and went into her and Walter's room. She undressed, braided her hair, showered, rubbed in face cream, brushed her teeth, and got into bed. 12, she turned the lamp off. Lying on her back, she swung out her right leg and arm. She missed Walter beside her, but the expanse of cool sheet smoothness was pleasant. How many times had she gone to bed alone since they were married? Not many. The nights he'd been out of town on Marburg Dunlevy business, the times she'd been in the hospital with Pete and Kim, the night of the power failure, when she'd gone home for Uncle Bert's funeral, maybe 20 or 25 times in all in the 10 years and a little more. It wasn't a bad feeling. By God, it made her feel like Joanna Ingalls again. Remember her? She wondered if Walter was getting bombed. That was liquor on the truck that Gary Claybrook had been riding in, or had the cartons been too small for liquor? But Walter had gone in Vic Stavros' car, so let him get bombed. Not that he really was likely to. He hardly ever did. What if Vic Stavros got bombed? The sharp curves on Norwood Road. Ah, nuts. Why worry? One more. The bed was shaking. She lay in the dark, seeing the darker side of the open bathroom door and the glint of the dresser's handles, and the bed kept shaking her in a slow, steady rhythm, each shake accompanied by a faint spring squeak, again and again and again. It was Walter who was shaking. He had a fever, or the DTs? She spun around and leaned to him on one arm, staring, reaching to find his brow. His eye whites looked at her and turned instantly away. All of him turned from her, and the tenting of the blanket at his groin was gone as she saw it, replaced by the shape of his hip. The bed became still. He had been masturbating? She didn't know what to say. She sat up. I thought you had the DTs, she said, or a fever. He lay still. I didn't want to wake you, he said. It's after 2. She sat there and caught her breath. He stayed on his side, not saying anything. She looked at the room, its windows and furniture dim in the glow from the nightlight in Pete and Kim's bathroom. She fixed her braid down straight and rubbed her hand on her midriff. You could have, she said. Woke me. I wouldn't have minded. He didn't say anything. Gee whiz, you don't have to do that, she said. I just didn't want to wake you, he said. You were sound asleep. Well, next time wake me. He came over onto his back. No tent. Did you? She asked. No, he said. Oh, she said. Well, and smiled at him. Now I'm up. She lay down beside him, turning to him, and held her arm out over him, and he turned to her, and they embraced and kissed. He tasted of scotch. I mean, consideration is fine, she said in his ear, but Jesus. It turned out to be one of their best times ever, for her at least. Wow, she said, coming back from the bathroom. I'm still weak. He smiled at her, sitting in bed and smoking. She got in with him and settled herself comfortably under his arm, drawing his hand down onto her breast. What did they do, she said. Show you dirty movies or something? He smiled. No such luck, he said. He put his cigarette by her lips, and she took a puff of it. They took 80-50 from me in poker, he said. and they chewed my ear off about the zoning board's evil intentions. Re Eastbridge Road. I was afraid you were getting bombed. Me? 2 scotches. They're not heavy drinkers. What did you do? She told him, and about her hopes for the picture of the black man. He told her about some of the men he had met, the pediatrician the Van Sants and the Claybrooks had recommended, the magazine illustrator who was Stepford's mayor celebrity, 2 other lawyers, a psychiatrist, the police chief, the manager of the center market. The psychiatrist should be in favor of letting women in, she said. He is, Walter said, and so is Dr. Berry. I didn't sound out any of the others. I didn't want to come on as too much of an activist my first time there. When are you going again? She asked, and was suddenly afraid. Why? That he would say tomorrow. I don't know, he said. Listen, I'm not going to make it a way of life the way Ted and Vic do. I'll go in a week or so, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of provincial, really. She smiled and snuggled closer to him. I want to do one more. It's been a half an hour. Maybe we should call it. What do you think? Are you intrigued? Is he masturbating? I think we've only seen the movie like partially in bits here and there. Might be time to revisit. I also have a copy of the Body Snatchers, a book, paperback. A pocket-sized paperback, I guess. That's what this is too, right? Alright, one more and then that's right. It's just a short one. She was about a third of the way down the stairs, going by foot heel, holding the damn laundry basket to her face because of the damn banister, when, wouldn't you know it, the double damn phone rang. She couldn't put the basket down, it would fall, and there wasn't enough room to turn around with it and go back up, so she kept going down, slowly down, foot feeling and thinking, okay, to the answers. Let's see, start over. She couldn't put the basket down, it would fall, and there wasn't enough room to turn around with it and go back up. So she kept going slowly down, foot feeling and thinking, okay, to the phone's answer me this instant ringing, again with the hyphens. She made it to the bottom, put the basket down, and stalked to the den desk. Hello, she said, the way she felt, with no put-on graciousness. Hi, is this Joanna Eberhardt? The voice was loud, happy, raspy. Peggy Clavenger-ish. But Peggy Clavenger had been with Paris Match, the last she'd heard, and wouldn't even know she was married, let alone where she was living. Yes, she said, who's this? We haven't been formally introduced, the no, not Peggy Clavenger voice said, but I'm going to do it right now. Bobby, I'd like you to meet Joanna Eberhardt. Joanna, I'd like you to meet Bobby Markow. That's Kowe. Bobby has been living here in Ajax country for 5 weeks now, and she'd like very much to know an avid shutterbug with a keen interest in politics and the women's lib movement. That's you, Joanna, according to what it says here in the Stepford Chronicle, or Chronicle Ill, depending on your journalistic standards. Have they conveyed an accurate impression of you? Are you really not deeply concerned about whether pink soap pads are better than blue ones or vice versa? Given complete freedom of choice, would you just as soon not squeeze the Charmin? Hello? Are you still there, Joanna? Hello? Hello, Joanna said. Yes, I'm here. And how I'm here. Hello, son of a gun, it pays to advertise. All right, we'll stop there with a little bit. Till next time, we'll see what happens. Will Walter masturbate, not masturbate again? Will there be more words elongated by hyphens to describe? I mean, can't you just use regular adjectives? I don't know, I think it's kind of quaint, actually. Maybe it was the style of the early 70s, who knows? I wonder if he does that in Rosemary's Baby. Maybe we should find out. Thanks for watching, listening. Drive safe out there. Yeah, and don't squeeze the Charmin. I mean, everybody knows.